All right, here we go. So I'm feeling really anxious about making this video, so apologies in advance for that. But yeah, look, almost it's hard to believe it's been a year now since we've been in this studio, and almost a year since I announced that we were going to be moving to doing boosted media as a full-time thing. And one of the things that I promised you guys when I made that announcement was that I was going to be getting a little bit more personal with the channel, sharing a little bit more about, some of the stuff that goes on behind the scenes, and I guess sharing more about my life experiences, because I know in the past when I've touched upon those sorts of things, things from my childhood and my life, it's been very well received by you guys, and a lot of you have found it extremely insightful and helpful. And I feel like I kind of haven't. Well, I mean, it's not even that I feel like I haven't. I simply, the fact is I haven't upheld what I promised I was going to be doing, and I woke up this morning feeling particularly guilty about it. It's been on my mind for quite some time now. But yeah, I woke up this morning feeling like this is something that I really needed to do. So here we are doing it. But what I wanted to do today is, I guess, talk about a little, well, I can't even get my words out today. I wanted to talk a little bit about, some of the things that are going on in the world at the moment, and I guess my perspective on some of that. Not from a position of influence or anything like that. I'm not trying to, tell people what they should be thinking or how they should be reacting, nothing like that. I just want to share my take on the situation and some of the strategies and some of the things that I've been doing to, I guess, deal with the stress and the anxiety that comes from that, being somebody who suffers with a diagnosed severe generalized anxiety disorder. So yeah, I guess I should probably start out by talking a little bit more about my background and what's brought me to this point. And then we'll talk about, the things that are going on in the world right now, and then, my reaction to it and, some of my strategies. So I, when I was a little kid, it was very obvious that I was different from the other kids. I wasn't diagnosed until much later on in life, but I do have Asperger's syndrome, relatively mild case. High functioning. So, it's kind of one of those things that makes me a little bit socially awkward, makes me a little bit different to the other kids or the other adults now, but not something that is, enough to make me stand out as somebody with a disability, so to speak. So I can function perfectly fine at work. I can, hold a conversation, no issue. But the way I react to social cues and the way I deal with social situations in particular can be quite different from other people. And I'm sure a lot of you guys have picked up in some of my videos, some of my mannerisms and stuff like that, some of my little, my fidgeting and stuff like that, my playing with my hands. And that's the reason for that. And it's not something that I'm ashamed of. It's not something that I'll apologize for. It's just the way I am. And yeah, it is what it is. But that's the reason why I'm, a little bit different on camera to some of the other YouTubers that you might have seen. Now, one of the things that's kind of stemmed from that is the anxiety. And growing up, I had all sorts of problems with, school refusal. I ended up doing homeschooling for a long period of time because I was too scared to go to school. Separation anxiety as well. My parents split up when I was 12, so back in 1996. And, that hit me really hard, as it would anybody. And I developed a unhealthily strong attachment with my mum. In that, I was really scared to be away from her. I couldn't go to school because I was scared of not being near my mum. And part of that was because I was worried about her, obviously going through a separation and everything. But for the most part, it was just my own anxiety and my own, I guess, separation anxiety is what it's called. That's, the technical term for it. But yeah, I was just, I was really scared to sort of do anything that was outside of my comfort zone. And later on in life, as I've sort of progressed into different career paths and stuff like that, it's manifested in different ways. So, things like being scared to travel to a new place or basically do anything outside of my comfort zone. International travel's always been really difficult for me. And I've turned down plenty of jobs because I'm scared to get on a plane. Just basically anything where I'm not in control is a real struggle for me. And I think that what a lot of people don't realize about people that struggle with anxiety is that things that regular or normal people take for granted are really, really, really difficult for people that struggle with anxiety. And, I'm talking about simple things like, going to the shops, for example, or going to a job interview. I mean, job interviews are scary for most people, but for people that suffer with anxiety, what happens is we get this irrational fear that creeps in, and it's completely overwhelming to the point where we just can't function. And, I've talked about this plenty of times in the past. One of the reasons I actually got into sim racing in the first place was because of my anxiety and the fact that, whenever I went to the track in a real car, I was so scared of hurting myself or breaking the car that I didn't actually enjoy the experience of driving around on the track. And that's the reason why I love sim racing so much, is because that anxiety isn't really so much associated with, a simulation as it is in the real world. So it's something that I can enjoy the benefits of, racing without, being scared to do so. So hopefully that makes sense. But the point here is that, through my experience with, going to different psychologists, counselors, psychiatrists, being on different medications as well for anxiety, I've got a lot of experience with this. And, I talk to a lot of people in my regular day-to-day life who struggle with this. And I've developed a lot of strategies for myself, which have really helped me. And I think that some of these will help you guys as well. So that's why I'm making this video today, to, I guess, try to share a little bit more about myself and open up a little bit, as well as hopefully give you guys some strategies and some tools that you can use with your own anxiety. Now, everybody's going to be different. Some people will be struggling a lot more than others. But I think one of the things that I've noticed through the, through the situation that's facing the world at the moment, is that a lot of people had a lot of really deeply seated issues that are now boiling to the surface. And, we've seen that not only in the response to the pandemic situation, but also with the whole Black Lives Matter movement as well. And, I don't want to get deeply into the whole Black Lives Matter thing, simply because, I'm a white guy living a relatively privileged life here in Australia, and it's not something that's ever impacted me. And for that reason, I don't feel like I'm even justified in having a strong opinion on it at all. So I just don't feel like it's my place to talk about that, because it's not an issue for me. But I've been really encouraged to see a lot of people who it has impacted coming out, talking about their experiences, and for the first time actually feeling like they have the support of the community behind them, to the point where they can actually feel comfortable coming out and not having to suppress those things that have been affecting them in their entire lives. So, that has been really great. And I really do encourage any of you guys who this has impacted to, to open up and talk about it, because the support is there. And that's something that we're going to talk about in this video a little bit more later on, around, talking about your issues and stuff like that, because that is something that is extremely important. But one of the observations that I've had throughout the, the last 6 or 7 months with the pandemic, as well as the Black Lives Matter thing, is that a lot of people have these deeply seated issues that are now boiling to the surface, and they're starting to come out. And one of the things that we've seen in particular with the protesting around Black Lives Matter is that we've seen a lot of this rioting. And a lot of people have been really confused about, why are people rioting? Why are people destroying property in the name of something that's supposed to be, a progressive movement, and something that's supposed to help people and drive society forward? And my personal opinion on this, my own observation, is that what we're seeing is people who are extremely frustrated. They've got something that they can now use as an outlet for that frustration. And so, we're seeing all these people jump on this band. And I don't like to use the term bandwagoning, because, a lot of people are protesting perfectly legitimately. But there are also a lot of people, it's the minority, but there are a lot of people that are jumping on this bandwagon and using it as an excuse, so to speak, to act out their frustrations for completely unrelated issues. Now, one of the things that's come out of this pandemic, and something that I've been struggling with a lot personally, is, the fact that we're locked down, we're stuck with the same 3 or 4 family members all the time, and we don't have the same releases or the same ways to express ourselves as we used to. So, we can't go off to work for the day. We don't get to get away from our family and our wife or our husband for the day. We don't get that separation. We don't get that opportunity to, do one thing and then come home and enjoy family time or whatever. And that's something that's been a struggle for me for quite a long time now, since long before the pandemic, because I've actually worked from home myself for the last 4 years now, in varying different capacities, not only since we've moved to doing boosted media as a full-time thing, but also I was working from home in my job before that as well. And that's something that I didn't anticipate, but something that's been really difficult for me personally is, not having that commute each day, not having that time alone to kind of just download and process my emotions and stuff like that, has made it very easy for me to lash out at my kids or lash out at my wife when I'm feeling frustrated about something that's work related. And that's really, really unfair. But I think that, you only have to look as far as the statistics on domestic violence at the moment in the world to see that, since we've all been locked down, the domestic violence rates have just gone through the roof. And when I say domestic violence, I'm not talking just about physical. I'm talking about, domestic abuse in general, verbal as well as emotional abuse. And, those things are just as dangerous as physical abuse can be. And, it is a struggle. And I think that's something that's really important to acknowledge, is that even the best of us with the best intentions, we do lash out at our loved ones. We do tend to, use our loved ones as not physical, but a punching bag, so to speak, an emotional punching bag a lot of the time. And that sucks. So yeah, I mean, that's something that's a struggle at the best of times. But when you combine that with the uncertainty that a lot of people face at the moment with, losing their jobs or not knowing what's happening with work. A lot of people have retained their jobs for now, but, their industry is being torn to shreds by the fact that nobody can go out, particularly people that work in entertainment. Travel as well has been absolutely, decimated by all of this. And, there's a massive amount of uncertainty in the world at the moment. So people who, have a responsibility to look after their family financially, or, even just trying to look after themselves, are doing it really tough at the moment. So before we dig deeper into some of this, I just want to acknowledge as well that, I consider myself to have been very lucky through the current situation. So, I'm sure that a lot of people will probably be watching this thinking, well, what does this guy know? He's working from home anyway. He's earning good money through YouTube anyway. So, he's completely irrelevant. And then I guess I just wanted to sort of quantify what I'm about to say in a little bit more detail and open up a little bit more about my situation for you guys as well. So, in the current situation, so we'll rewind back to when lockdown first started happening here in Australia. And, we were locked down back in March initially. And I actually was still relying upon some external contracts. So I was working full time for Boosted Media, but I was still doing some web and online marketing style contracts for other businesses, completely separate from the YouTube channel. But, that was the bread and butter, so to speak. That was what the majority of my income was coming from. And then the YouTube stuff was just sort of like a side thing that I was building up in the background. But I actually lost my main and one of my only remaining contracts literally 3 days before the lockdown happened. Now, I'd known that it was coming for quite some time, so it wasn't completely unexpected. And I did have some contingencies to at least some extent in place to sort of try to balance that out. But I found myself in the position where, we were facing lockdown. At that point, it was, imminent. We knew that it was going to be happening. It was inevitable. And so I lost my job. And I was, literally shitting myself. I was getting up in the morning and spending an hour on the toilet because of the anxiety. Wondering what I was going to do and feeling like a failure and, wondering how I was going to support my family. And I won't say luck, because I don't like that word, because I don't think luck really has a whole lot to do with it. But as fate would have it, let's say, I found myself in the lucky position that there was a massive boom in the sim racing industry right as the lockdown started. Everybody started buying gear. And of course, because a lot of people were using the affiliate links because they love to support the channel, which I really do appreciate. There was a big increase in the amount of income that was coming through the YouTube channel, to the point where basically, look, I'll be completely honest with you guys. I was able to earn in a couple of months what I would normally have earned in about a year. And that took the pressure off, as of course you can imagine, massively. And there is still a lot of volatility around that income. It's certainly not a stable income by any means, but what I'm trying to say here is that I was able to earn enough money through that lockdown period that it took the pressure off completely, and I was able to focus completely on the channel, and finances weren't really a stress for me for the duration of the first lockdown. At least it's looking like we're going to all be locked down again for God knows how long now, but that's another story. But look, I was very lucky in that sense that I found myself in a position where I didn't have to worry about how I was going to put the next meal on the table or anything like that, as it turned out. So I definitely consider myself to be one of the more lucky ones in that regard. But I know, a lot of you guys have lost your jobs. A lot of you people are facing the proposition of losing your jobs, or just the general uncertainty around what's going to happen. And a lot of the time that can actually be a lot worse than the reality. And we'll talk about that in a little bit as well. But I guess I wanted you guys to understand that, yes, while I am one of the lucky ones, and I can sit here in front of you, in front of, the camera that I just bought with the money that we earned from the channel, and, I can share this content with you without the stress of, where the next meal is going to come from. I wanted to acknowledge that first of all. But, I have been through struggles in the past with job uncertainty. I lost my job a couple of years ago, 3 days after we bought this house, and, 2 weeks before my son was born. So I have been through that. I do know what it's like, and I can identify with that experience, at least to some extent. So I don't want to sort of come across as somebody who has no idea what it's like for normal, people in normal jobs, so to speak. Now, that in itself has been one of the reasons why I haven't felt comfortable talking about this. And I did actually mention this a couple of months ago now when I did my review of the new cockpit, or the putting together video of the new cockpit, the assembly video, how I was struggling with a lot of feelings of guilt around the success that I was having amidst, so many other people suffering at the moment. And that's been part of the reason why I haven't felt comfortable talking about this. But I really do want to turn my experience into something that can be positive for you guys who might be struggling at the moment as well. So that's, I guess, my reason for making this video today. So let's talk a little bit more about some of the strategies that I've developed over the many years of dealing with this stuff that kind of helped me from day to day, as well as sort of, running a business in the workplace, coping with family and stuff like that. And I'm going to bring Jillian as well, who's been behind the camera. I'm going to shuffle over because she has been a big help with this stuff as well. And that's not to say that you need to have a wife or a partner for this kind of thing to work, but she's definitely been a big support, and it'd be good to sort of have a bit of a discussion as we go, I think. So, look, starting out when I was really young, I didn't really have any strategies for this kind of thing because I didn't really understand what was going on, and, I couldn't really regulate my own emotions. So, I'd get in a situation where, and I'm sure this is probably the same for you as well, where, I wouldn't know what was going on. I wouldn't know how to react, and I wouldn't know what an appropriate reaction to a situation was either. So,
and you wouldn't realize that what you were feeling was not normal because it was your reality as well.
Exactly. And that's kind of why it's good to have another person here to talk about as well, because your observation of my behavior wouldn't be the same as my own anyway. No. Because actually, I can give a really good example of, I used to work with a guy who had bipolar. Or he was bipolar, I should say. And he was seeing a psychologist, and he was having all sorts of trouble with his medication. And they just couldn't find the right combination of medication that would work for him. And I was sort of talking to him a lot about it because he knew that I had some similar struggles. And he was telling me that, he was telling me some of the stuff that he'd told his doctor. And his perspective on his reality was so much different from what it was actually like in the real world. I actually said to him, do you want me to come with you to an appointment and talk to the doctor about what it's like as a fly on the wall, or what it's like actually interacting with you day to day? And I ended up having like a half-hour consultation with the guy's doctor, and within a couple of months they adjusted his medication and he was a lot better. So it just goes to show, how much different having a third person or a different perspective on the situation can have. But a lot of you guys are single, and that's cool. But if you've got a close friend or a family member, maybe it's your mum, maybe it's your dad, whoever it is, it doesn't matter. Having somebody that's close to you that can sort of help you out and that you can bounce ideas off is really important. That's why I've got Jill here now, because she's been such a big help. But that kind of leads into the first point, which is don't be afraid to talk about your feelings. And I've got a little cheat sheet here in front of me so I don't miss anything. So if I'm looking off camera, that's why. But yeah, don't be afraid to talk to family and friends about how you're feeling. I think that communication not only gets things off your own chest and, lifts the burden off yourself, but it also gives them the opportunity to understand what's going on as well, because...
And also so they can support you too. Because, for example, I had postnatal depression with our first daughter, and one of the biggest struggles I had is I'm a very social person. I love having friends over. I love hanging out with people. But when I had depression, I didn't want to see anyone. I didn't want to do anything. And so I pushed a lot of people away because they'd say, hey, let's hang out. And I'd be like, oh, I'm busy, or, oh, I can't. And if you push people away enough, they'll stop asking. And after a while, some of my friends just stopped asking.
They just disappeared.
Yeah. Whereas when I finally opened up and said, look, actually, the reason I've been avoiding everyone is because of this is how I've been feeling, a lot of them were a lot more understanding and a lot, they could kind of relate a bit better, and they were able to support me because they could see that maybe supporting me wasn't spending time with me, but dropping a meal off or things like that can make a big difference.
Yeah, you've got to let people know what you're struggling with. And I think it's something that you see a lot in the workplace as well. People, complaining about how their manager's shit or whatever. And they say, oh, my manager doesn't understand. My manager doesn't do anything for this and that. It's like, well, have you actually told the manager that there's a problem? Like, running a business is difficult. And, if you've got multiple employees, you can't be...
intimately aware of every single person.
You can't be intimately aware of every single situation, every single thing that's unfolding. That's the reason why you have people underneath you to take care of those things. But if they're not relaying that information back to you, then there's no way to, you know, I think Robin Williams is a really good example of this.
Everyone thinks he was so
because everybody thought, you know, he was a professional entertainer and everybody thought that he was the happiest guy on the planet. And then,
yep,
you know, it comes out that, you know, his entire life he'd been struggling and nobody knew. And that's just horrible. And I know that that's what a lot of people go through. And I think particularly, I mean, I don't know, Jill might disagree with me on this, but I think particularly for males, we tend to not want to share our feelings and not want to sort of open up about things because we're scared of being vulnerable. You know, we don't want our partner to think that we're weak or, you know, because we kind of want to have this manly persona of, yeah, I take care of the family. But, you know, sometimes the best way you can take care of a relationship or take care of your family is to actually be vulnerable and open up and talk about how you're feeling. And that's something that, you know, has been a real staple of our relationship.
And I think a big thing as well is knowing your triggers and having a way to manage them. So, for example, I'm super social. I love to go parties. I love to go out. I love to go out places, whereas Will's much more reserved. So if we're out, I can tell when he's about to hit the limit, when he's getting overwhelmed. Yeah. And so we've developed strategies where I'll say, can you go get my coat from the car? Most likely I haven't left my coat in the car, but it's just, babe, just go outside. You're like, where the fuck are you putting this?
There's no coat in here.
But like, it's just, it gives him a way to sort of get out of a situation. And another thing too with that is also letting our friends know, because, you know, if we're out and he's just like not talking to anyone, and this happened when we first started dating.
Yeah.
Some of my friends...
just to give you a little background to this, because of that, this is because of the Asperger's thing more than the anxiety thing. But yeah, I don't cope in loud social situations because my brain just hears everything, and I can't have a conversation in a crowded room because all I hear is noise, and that becomes overwhelming and overstimulating. So you know, when we would go out and I'd, you know, bring him someplace, and some of my friends were like, he's a bit rude, like he just sits there and he won't talk to anyone. And I had to sort of explain to them, it's actually not that he's being rude. He just genuinely is struggling with the environment. Yeah. And so now, like, most of our friends are quite aware of it. And so they kind of have that leeway. That understanding.
You know, if for some reason we have to cancel plans, and even when I had the depression, postnatal depression as well, there'd be times where last minute I'd be like, I just can't do this. And obviously, you know, I don't like to cancel plans last minute, but by letting our friends know what was going on, they could then be a bit more understanding and a bit more supportive if we had to change plans or cancel. Yeah,
exactly. So yeah, it's just about being open and honest. And I mean, it's a hard thing to do at first, but you'll find that the more you do it, the easier it becomes as well. Like you're reserved about it at first and you're scared, and that's perfectly normal. But when you start to open up to people and you start to see a response, and it was the same for me the first time I opened up on this channel about, you know, things that happen behind the camera.
Yeah.
You know, and I was so scared about doing it. And again, like I've been scared to make this video, but like every time I've done it in the past, there's been all these people that have come out of nowhere and said, hey, you know, I really appreciate that video. And just not only knowing that it's helping people, but knowing that there's other people in the world that are struggling with the same things makes you feel less alone. And it helps lift the burden. So.
It also reminds me as well, when we did our big trip around the world.
Yeah.
Will is very
I told them
very
before about not wanting to get on planes. Yeah.
Well, one of the things that we found that I was amazed at was when we would check in, I would go straight to the gate and I would say, my husband has anxiety about flying.
My husband's disabled.
My husband's special. He doesn't like flying. And I was actually really amazed at how understanding the flight attendants were, how good they were. They'd be like, okay, do you need to board first? Do you need to board last?
Yeah, and like I kind of, in my mind, I expected them to just be like, oh, here we go, another one. Yeah. You know, but none of them were like that.
They take it very seriously. And especially if you just, you know, if you just let people know what's going on, they're generally very accommodating. Whereas otherwise, they'd have been like, who's this crazy person?
Yeah. And I think that like that's actually something that's changing a lot at the moment in the world as well. Because like even, you know, part of the basis of this whole Black Lives Matter things is people wanting to be heard, people wanting to be understood, and people wanting to feel like, you know, their opinion matters. And the more we open up, the more we share about our reality, the more that normalizes that kind of behavior. And I think that's something that really positive that we are going to see in the world now coming out of the whole COVID thing. Or, you know, and, you know, part of the reason why these movements happen is because people are frustrated and sick of being suppressed, and they want to open up, they want to talk. Yep. And I think, you know, a lot of times my family, like my parents and stuff, have been quite critical of me opening up. But
it's a different generation.
It's a different generation, like, because they weren't, you know, they didn't have these platforms and stuff to talk and open up to people. But yeah, so like that's the first thing I think. But also, it's really important to not be afraid to talk to professionals as well.
Yes.
I've got a really close friend who I've been talking to him quite a bit recently, and he recently made the decision to go and talk to a GP or a general practitioner or a general doctor about how he's feeling. Because he was thinking that he was, he's very similar to me. I think he might have mild Asperger's, but he's probably watching this and going, "Oh, don't diagnose me." But I won't say his name, but he knows who he is. But he went and saw the doctor. The doctor put him on a mental health program, started him on some medication, and his whole life has completely changed. He's not so snappy anymore. He's not abrupt with customers anymore. He's relaxed. He's not as angry, and that's been really important to him. And like, I've been through the whole medication thing before. I've been on medication before, and like at the moment, I don't feel like I need it. But Jill might disagree. But generally speaking, I've got enough experience with it now that I kind of know when I'm outside the realm of self-management and need external help.
Yeah.
And I'm lucky that I've got, somebody like you that can sort of help me regulate that as well. But look, don't be afraid to ask for help. There is help out there as well. And
another thing as well I'd mention with that is when a lot of times the cost can be a bit prohibitive for people.
Yeah.
They get overwhelmed. For mums in particular, when I had the postnatal depression, there's most of the time, if you contact your local child's health center, we are on the Central Coast, and there's actually a local mother-child unit that actually has a psychologist that actually came to our house, spent time with me, gave me, so I didn't have to leave the house.
Yeah, I mean, that varies depending on where people are in the world, but don't just assume that there isn't help out there. Like
GPs can often
help. Like go to a GP as a first step, and then they'll probably be able to refer you to whoever's most appropriate from there.
And with the medication as well, this is what I've always said, if you break your arm, you put a cast. If you're having some problems with your mental health.
If your steering wheel breaks, you send it back for repair, right?
I think the stigma around mental health, like taking medication, is definitely being reduced. And it was very interesting because when I ended up going on it for 3 months, I think I was on. And I was very open with my friends, telling them that I was going on medication, mainly because I wanted to know if they noticed any changes. Yeah. And I was actually amazed at how many of my friends were like, "Oh yeah, I've been on that."
Yeah.
Like, I had no idea. Like, I didn't realize.
Well, I'm the only person, and like, you never would have thought this growing up because I was always the one that had the problem, so to speak. But I think I'm the only person in my side of the family now that isn't on some sort of medication. So, yeah, it's and
it does.
It
can make a big difference, and it can take time to find the right one, and that's something you have to be open to. And I think for me, the easiest way to describe it was like it just took the edge off. Yeah. It just took the edge off, and it meant that I could just get through the day and cope bit by bit until, things got a bit better. So exactly. I think, medication and working with a professional can be incredibly helpful. Yeah.
So the next thing on my little list is general positivity, and a couple of things around that as well. So one of the big things that I try to do is not necessarily keep a diary, but keep mental note. And sometimes some people are more prone to sort of wanting to write things down, and that if that works for you, then that's good. That's kind of what you do. But just sort of keeping a diary of how you're feeling, how you've reacted to different situations throughout the day, and how you think you could have reacted differently. And then coming back and looking at that later on and reflecting on how you've dealt with different situations, and how you've actually improved over time as well. So looking back and being able to see, hey, the way I reacted to this situation today isn't the same as I would have done a month ago. That's an improvement. Awesome, So I think that's really important as well. It sounds a little bit lame, especially for guys, like keeping a diary, but it does.
Dear diary today.
Yeah, but it genuinely does help. So that's another really important one. And also taking the time as part of that to appreciate and acknowledge the things that you appreciate and enjoy in life as well. And that can be, with loved ones and family, as well as, just, going, I really enjoyed going out for that walk today, or I really enjoyed that sim race that I did today, or, just taking the time to appreciate those positive things in your life, because sometimes it's easy to get so caught up in the, the stresses and the negative things that you kind of just don't take the time to actually reflect on the things that you do love about life. And life can kind of start to feel a bit,
I like to drive Will nuts with my positive psychology books that I read. But I will say one book that I love is about The Art of Happiness with Sean Acor. So his whole philosophy is about how when we are happy, when we're a positive frame of mind, we are far more likely to be successful. And he studies that from a psychologist's perspective. And some of the things he says in his books about, you know, the power of shifting your mindset and focusing on the good, and how the easiest way to explain it is, in our brain, one of the things we have, because there's so much information all around us all the time, that in our brain, we have a structure called the reticular activating system, the RAS, and it basically is like a Google search for your brain. So the idea is, have you ever had where you're wanting to buy a new red car? Yeah. And all of a sudden, what you see is red cars.
Yeah, all you see is red cars.
Or you're thinking, I might cut my hair. And all of a sudden, all you see is people with short hair. It's not like there's suddenly been an influx of red cars. What it is you have mentally programmed your brain to look for particular criteria, red cars or short hair. So when you are focusing on positivity and you are making that your goal and your aim, what your brain does is it starts to filter out the negative and actually picks up even little things like, I made that green light. The coffee lady smiled at me today, like those little pieces. Whereas the flip side is, if you are focusing on the negative, then your brain will start picking up the negative. Or if you're focusing on, I'm so stupid or I'm so silly, then your brain does that as well. And so by having that positivity, it really makes a difference.
That leads perfectly into one of the future points, but we might rearrange the list a little bit, because that's a really, really good segue to... I'm sure a lot of you guys are aware, but for those who aren't, the way social media is actually structured and the way the algorithms work is it intentionally feeds you stuff reactive stuff. It's not even that. It intentionally feeds you stuff that it knows will piss you off, so that you'll react to it, because it's, you know, part of human psychology is you're more likely to interact and spend more time on a post if it's something that gets you triggered, right? So Facebook is actually showing you stuff intentionally that pisses you off and makes the world seem like a bad place, just to make you spend more time on Facebook. And it works. Otherwise they wouldn't do it. But, you know, and it's the same with the news as well. Like, I mean, because news is not the same way as it was decades ago, and everybody with a phone now is, a reporter. So news has to do the same thing. Like, it's all about clicks. It's not about being the most accurate source of news or anything like that. It's all about what's going to get the clicks. And that's why you're seeing all these recycled articles that are exactly the same with a more sensational headline and stuff.
Clickbait.
And, you know, so it's really important to have a gauge on that. And one of the really big problems that we have at the moment with lockdowns is that we're not actually out in the real world anymore. We're not interacting with people anymore. So all we see is through the lens of social media or through news. So, like, I actually had a thing the other day when I went out to the shops when I got all the camera gear, and it was the first time I'd sort of been out and interacted in the real world for about 3 or 4 months. And whether it's a good thing or a bad thing is another point, but people were just going about their lives as normal. And, you know, but in my little studio in this room, you know, looking through the lens of social media and looking through the lens of the news,
the world had stopped.
You know, the world was in absolute chaos. Everybody lost their job. Everybody didn't know where the next meal was going to come from. But then when I went out in the real world, it was, you know, it was fine. It was normal. So, you know, it's really important to try to maintain that perspective as much as you possibly can, and not...
And, you know, with social media as well, take it with a grain of salt. I still remember about...
Unless it's boosted media.
That's always true.
It's always true.
No, it's really funny how we have totally different feeds. And I remember this because it was when the Oscars were on. And my feed the entire day was Bradley Cooper and Lady Gaga at the Oscars. Were they in love? Were they having an affair? Like, literally every article was all about this. Yeah. Yours was all about George Pell. And we sat down at dinner and he goes, I can't believe about George Pell. I'm like, what about George Pell? Lady Gaga, Bradley Cooper. He's like, who are they?
Who are they, yeah.
And literally our news feeds, we sat down together, we were scrolling through, and it was just phenomenal how it gave us such different context.
Completely different perspective on the world.
Yeah, and it was just, you know, I had no idea about what was going on in you know, the world that you were living in, and it was
and
just...
it will it's always going to feed you stuff that it knows that you're interested in based on what you've interacted with previously. So if all you've interacted with is negativity, then it's just going to give you negativity.
Yeah.
But it's the same as well with the people that you interact with. Like, if you surround yourself with negative thinking, down the dumps type people constantly, and this is online as well as, you know, as in person. I mean, like, a lot of us sim racers tend to, you know, be a little bit introverted. But if we're, you know, participating in groups that are constant negativity, constant bashing, constant, you know, then we're going to become more negative people because we don't have any positivity in our lives. So you really want to try and balance that out and try to, you know, surround yourself with positive information, you know, involve yourself in positive thinking communities like this one. And, you know, like we've got a really strong community of people in our Discord community, as well as the Facebook groups that we run as well. And any negativity, we just get rid of it straight away. And it's not because we're wanting to, you know, moderate, so to speak. It's just because there's no place for negativity in this community. Like we're trying to build a positive place where we build each other up and we help each other. And, you know, negativity, there's no place for it.
We all rise together.
Exactly. So that's the next thing. Just looking at my list again now. So the last thing that I wanted to talk about as well is more of a, I guess, a strategy in terms of day-to-day coping mechanisms. And this is something that I kind of started to do. I was thinking it was actually when we went on our around the world trip was probably the first time that I really realized that I was doing this. To sort of put you in the right mind frame on this, I know that most guys are absolutely terrified of going to the doctor, right? And you'll put it off 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 until something really bad happens, right? And then like you break your arm or you cut yourself really badly and you know that you have to go to the hospital and you know you have to go to the doctor. And what you find is that when you're in that situation where you have no choice, you surrender to the reality of the situation and you kind of just accept it and
you're on an airplane.
Yeah, exactly.
You can't get off.
Exactly, yeah. So all the thinking and all the sort of planning and stuff that goes on in the background is generally, at least for me, what is the most stressful part of the process rather than the actual reality of doing something, right? So, you know, once you're at the doctor and the doctor's looking after you and you've got a hot nurse, you're fine, right? But, you know, the staying at home and thinking about it is the part that's scary. So the psychology behind that is in the way our brain actually processes situations. And what our brains like to do is they like to break things down into manageable tasks, right? And that's the reason why that when you're in that situation in the hospital or in the doctors where you have no choice, you're focused on the reality of what's going on right now. My arm hurts, my leg hurts, whatever. And that's where your brain is focusing all of its capacity. So what I like to do is, and using the round the world trip as an example, break the tasks down into manageable things. So if I look at it and I go, oh my God, I've got to get on 13 different planes. I'm going to be flying for 52 hours. 52 hours it was.
52 hours.
I've got to, you know, drive through the city where there's going to be all this traffic. I'm going to be having to talk in different languages. I'm going to have to try and find accommodation. I'm going to have to try and figure out where I'm going. I might lose my, you know, like all these things that go through your head and freak you out. Forget all of that. Okay. So
what do I need to do in the next 5 minutes?
Exactly. So it's like, okay, the first thing I need to do is pack my bag. So all of my focus, all of my attention goes into packing my bag and I just completely block out everything else, right? And then, okay, bag's packed. What do I need to do now? Get in the car. So I get in the car. Okay, I need to make it to the end of the street. And then you can go.
It literally was like this, just clarifying. Yeah. This was the trip. Okay, we're going to get on the airplane. We're going to sit down.
Yeah.
Now we're going to put our seatbelt on and we're going to...
It's like being with a 5-year-old, but
I love you dearly.
But it does work. And you don't need to go that overboard with it. Like that's just the level that I go to with it for me. But, you know, break it down into manageable things for you. So if you're really stressed about a long flight, go, all right, all I need to do is get through the airport. And then all I need to do is get on the plane. All I need to do is get through this next movie that we're watching. Mm-hmm. So rather than thinking about the 10-hour flight, you just think about, okay, I'm going to watch a half-hour TV show. Let's focus on that half hour, right? And then, okay, I'm going to watch another TV show and think of ways that you can actually engage your mind and distract yourself from what it is that's worrying you for a set period of time so that it's more manageable.
Which also kind of brings up one of my favorite strategies, which is affirmations and visualization.
Yeah.
And that's where if I have something stressful coming up, rather than letting my brain run through every single worst case scenario that could pop up, I visualize it going well. And so
I'm hopeless at that.
For a bit of background, I used to do elite gymnastics. And so before competitions, I would lay in bed and I would visualize my entire routine perfectly every night, and it would just go over and over. And same with, you know, if I had an interview, say for a job, I would in bed, I would visualize me, what I was wearing, how I was feeling. I'd visualize myself going really well.
Do guys think about what they're wearing? I think some do now.
Girls do.
I don't.
Or, so if you have something coming up and you're thinking about it, it's very easy. Like I said, get caught in that negative. Everything's going to go wrong. My heels are going to break. I'm going to say something silly. Okay, maybe
I'm just remembering that time. Do you remember when I got the job at Sony? And we were sitting having lunch.
And you're like, I didn't get the job.
No. I was saying, I don't think I'm going to get this job. I just don't think that I did well enough in the interview. And literally, when I finished the sentence, the phone rang and old mate Stu said, hey, how would you like to work for Sony? And I was like...
Because I've just got one more question for you.
That's right, yeah.
That was very exciting.
Yeah, so, good things do happen. And, if you get caught up in the negative cycle, then that's what happens. So.
And, just having those positive affirmations and, like I said, get your brain working for you by saying, I am confident, I am brave, I can do this, And even if it's just repeating it over and over, it will, get that brain focusing on the positivity. And that can help with lowering the anxiety. And again, these are all strategies, at least mine, I learned from psychologists, like, doctors. So again, they are useful to use.
And one of the other really good things there, just to finish up as well, is one of the things that, and we don't really do it so much anymore since having kids. Yeah, we should just start doing that. We should
be nice to each other.
Yeah. So one of the things that we did was, and we started doing it when we first got married, was we would
before bedtime.
So before bedtime, we would say, what was it? Two things that we
are thankful for.
Two things that we were thankful for.
And one thing we noticed about each other.
And one thing we noticed about each other. So it was two things that we were thankful for in the world in general. So it could be, I'm really thankful that, it was a nice sunny day. I'm really thankful that...
I found a place with free baby chinos.
Or I found a parking... anything. It could be as trivial or as, big as you want. It doesn't matter. The idea is that... Oh, hey, Lizzie. You want to come in? You want to come sit on my lap? Yeah. Come on.
We want to watch some Transformers because we've seen them before, but we just can't find it.
You want to watch Transformers, do you?
Yeah.
Is your movie over?
I don't want to finish watching it.
Oh, okay.
All right. Well, I'll go and sort that out for you, and then I'll come back and finish the video. Okay. I'll be back. But basically, it could be as trivial or as big as you wanted. So it could be as simple as I appreciated that it was sunny today, or I appreciated that we had a good meal, or that found a parking spot, or whatever. It doesn't really matter. The idea is that it gets you in a positive frame of mind, because what you'll find is when you first start doing it, you just kind of recall stuff. And it's easy. And then you start to run out of things. And so you have to actually start thinking about it throughout the day. And then the last one thing that we noticed about the other person, it would be something that was, nice that you did for me, and so again, like you'd find after a while you ran out of things. So you'd have to actually be kind of observant throughout the day, and you kind of go, it's 5 p.m. and Jill hasn't done anything nice yet. So you'd have to kind of start thinking about it. So it would put you in that positive frame of mind throughout the day, so that you were looking for positive things to reflect on when we sat down at night.
And it also means you go to bed in a good frame of mind. Like it means that you're going to bed thinking of how you had a good day, or things that you are grateful for, and that again helps you just to be in that positive state of mind. Yeah.
So I think that's pretty much it, guys. I hope that the video has given you a bit more of an insight as to what goes on behind the scenes in Boosted Media. And look, I do apologize for it being so long since I've spoken about this stuff. As I said, it was something that I'd intended to, involve in the channel more when we went to going full time. And just with everything that's been going on in the world lately, I've been scared to kind of approach it just because I wasn't sure how people would react. And, because there are so many different situations and so many extreme situations going on at the moment with people under stress and stuff, I didn't want to sort of open that can of worms and, make people feel like I didn't understand rather. And, because I am one of the lucky people that hasn't, had my work really affected by it, and I've been able to continue as usual and even had, greater success through the process of the whole lockdown thing. It has been an area that's been a little bit awkward for me to talk about. So, but yeah, I felt like it was time. I woke up this morning feeling a little bit guilty about not sort of doing this for a while. So I hope that you guys have, appreciated opening up a little bit more. And I hope that there's some stuff in here that we can use as well to help you guys out. And if you do have any questions, of course, let us know in the comments. Jump in our Discord community as well, or, just whichever way you'd like to get in touch, just please do so. I do get a lot of messages these days, so it is hard to get back to everybody, but I do try to read as many of them as I possibly can. And if there's something specific that you'd like advice with or help with, obviously I'm not a professional, I'm not a doctor or anything like that, but I do have plenty of experience with this stuff. Jill does too. And I feel like we're in a pretty decent place that we can offer, you know, that kind of thing to people who might be wanting some more advice and stuff like that. So yeah, guys, I hope you found the video good and useful, and we'll see you again soon. Bye.
Yeah.